I mean, it is a film that's, it seems to have got that stage because it's charmed people.
But my worry is that the way the film is sold here, especially, because we have a very different strategy of opening the film in the UK, is that it's sold almost like a kind of Mamma Mia type kind of film. You know, it's like the feel-good film, and the things you describe are elements that are in the film, but it's also a very tough film. The first half is very tough, and if you're going to go in expecting to see Mamma Mia, you're going to have a pretty tough first hour, to be absolutely honest. No, we wanted to, I mean, the whole idea was that we would make a film in this city, and it's a kind of, for Simon, the screenwriter, Simon Beaufoy, and myself, it's a tribute to the city and the effect this city had upon him writing the script and upon me making the film. And that's as important as any of the particular ingredients in a way.
But you can't have known that before you got there. I mean, unless, I don't know if you were a Mumbai, Bombay expert, but when you arrive there, well, anyone who gets off the plane in India is struck by it. And that's what your film does from the first.
I know, I wanted to convey that feeling of what the experience is like. I mean, it was my first time there, and it wasn't Simon's first time there. He'd been there as a hippie, I think, you know, after college, and he'd done the gap year or whatever, you know, the kind of travelling year. But I'd never done that. So for him it was a refresher course, and that he was startled, I think, by how much it had changed since that initial trip back there. But for me, it was you know, last year was my 2006, or whatever it was, when anyway, it was my first time there, really. And I wanted to kind of capture that sense of the city's assault upon you, which you either flee from and go home or head to your hotel, or you just embrace. And you'll never be the same again after it. It's all those cliches that people say about the place. So we wanted to try and convey that and give a sense of where it's going to as well, really, because you can feel that the place is at the vanguard of change. And the century that belonged to America, the last century, clearly belongs to Asia now. And one of the peaks or pinnacles or focus points of that will clearly be Mumbai. You know?
And you've got the corrugated iron roofs, the shanty town, and you get right down and dirty in there at low level. And it's just that brilliant chase sequence at the beginning. It kind of welcomes you.
The way it's being rebuilt, I mean, it's being the investment that's obviously going on there, and Hollywood, for instance, is very aware of. Is there scooping up, trying to scoop up some of that cash really that's there. So yeah, it's to try and show the two sides of it. I mean, the slums are really interesting because, of course, they are. You know, you have a kind of, there's a set opinion about slums which you have yourself when you first go there, and you imagine that they're going to be full of abject poverty, and they are very poor. Obviously, there's no toilets and there's not enough water provision and intermittent electricity and all those kind of things. But they're exhilarating places in Mumbai. The ones that we went to were extraordinary, and that was one of the shocks, is to find out how energetic and busy they are, and proud, and absolutely, they're watching you like a hawk, not to portray them as poor. You know, the number of people who said to us, "You're not going to show that we're poor, are you?" And you go, well, it's going to be very difficult, that, because if we show that, it's going to look poor. But they are resourceful and resilient places, and so the energy at the beginning of the film is a way to try and show it as it is, honestly, but also to kind of capture some of that ambition of the place as well, and it does avoid your cliches, really. Like, it's very interesting doing this. I read this article from this newspaper about Dharavi, the slum, and it was a very good article, but it did say that there are no schools in Dharavi, and that's not true. There's quite a few schools in Dharavi which are run by extraordinary people who are trying to help the kids in their own community. They're not run by foreign trusts or outsiders. They're run by local people who are trying to educate the kids in very difficult circumstances with hugely overcrowded classrooms.
Is that where you found your kids?
The school that we filmed in is a school that's there inside Dharavi. So it always avoids your expectations, you know, and you have to kind of go in there with an open mind about it, you know. And I learnt for Slumdog, for instance, not to take a huge crew. It's a lot easier in India, of course, because it has a massive film industry of its own. But we took like 10 people, that was all. And it makes you much more, it makes you belong locally much more. I mean, I am an outsider, and you hope that some of your outside perspective is helpful for the film, but it makes you depend on and trust local people that you build relationships with to make the film. And it's a much more, for me, it's now a much more appropriate way of making a film somewhere outside this country than the kind of slightly old, almost colonial approach that we took on the beach of let's take a huge army over to Thailand and show them how to make a film, shall we?
And did you learn from Slumdog a bit of crowd control there, as you'd like to shoot in real locations?
It's very different in Mumbai.
Yeah.
You can't control the crowds in Mumbai. There's nothing really there to look at. There's a bit in the south of the island to look at architecturally, but everywhere else there isn't very much to look at. What there is people, 20 million plus people in a very small place, and you've got to change the way you go about things, because normally what you're interested in as a director is, especially when you work in real life, is often about controlling a bit of it, capturing a bit of it, controlling it, repeating it, getting a bit of continuity going so it's plausible. And those kind of things will just waste your money there. You can do them, but they're incredibly time consuming and they'll soak up your budget. Because the natural instinct of the street is just change. Yeah. It's just movement and change. And so we tried to work in a different way and set our story within this wave of movement. And rather than saying, no, we've got to control that. And so we went with all the blows that you get, like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. We just went with it and said, okay, we can't do that, we'll do something else. And what you get in compensation for continuity, instead you get a kind of sense of life, I think, from the place.
Thank you very much for Slumdog Millionaire, and thank you for coming in the director's chair.
Pleasure. Thanks, Jason.